talking about the politics behind the planning of this raid here in a second and the nuts and bolts of it. Let's bring on board Tom Bigley, retired Delta Force operator and multi-tour veteran from Mogadishu to Afghanistan to Iraq. So have you read up on this? What's your take on this raid? It could, because CNN said not a 100% success.
Well, I mean, they're obviously talking about the casualties, which, and my condolences go out to those families and the fallen SEAL. The reality of it is these people know what they're getting into. It's a success in the sense that, you have to put people on the ground, and the left obviously is always worried about collateral damage. I didn't hear a lot of complaining about the drone strikes that Obama was doing every day. So, we got a lot of politics going on with that. But the reality of this is it's good to see these guys get in there. What I think is interesting is they didn't capture anybody. So my guess is, and this is a guess, but that the mission was not to bring people back. So, we identify these bad guys and we deal with them on the ground and then collect the intelligence and leave. So
let me,
kind of sounds like what they were doing.
To bring it down to what people are seeing on their screens today on CNN and out of MSNBC. So let me get this straight. When you when you enlisted in the Army, and then you went into the Ranger battalions, you went to airborne school, and you went to the Ranger battalions, Ranger school, etc. Then you go to the Delta Force, so you have to go to Delta selection. Is there a box on the form when you apply to those schools? Is there a box that you check that says only send me on the missions where you guarantee everyone will come home alive?
Right. Well, no, it says I'm going to support and defend the Constitution, the oath that you took. Apparently, some of these governors in some of these states and cities and counties that want to not follow the fact that they're supposed to defend the Constitution and not their own political beliefs. But that aside, the fact is that these guys went in there and did a great job. Sure, they had a casualty. The Delta guys had a casualty. You remember the Kurdish raid where the E-8 was killed up in...
like six months ago, yeah. Yeah, 6 months ago. And I mean, frankly, if one of my men had ever come to me and said, "Sir, I'm only going to go on patrol tomorrow if you can guarantee I'll make it home alive," I would have disarmed him and put him under arrest.
Well, the president said South Chicago's like a combat zone. So why aren't they complaining about that? They got more people dying in South Chicago than on military missions right now by far. So, the politics aside, I don't, my opinion of the left is whatever they say, just figure out the opposite of it, and you'll probably be a lot closer to correct.
So now let me ask you this, because this is another thing that I'm detecting is getting some momentum. That Trump ordered this raid, and my take on this, and I try to explain this to people, but this was a target. There's targeting and there's planning. This target has been known for several years as an Al-Qaeda headquarters, and they intentionally had children and family there to give it a biological camouflage of a normal village. But it was a target. It was a known target. It's just that the prior administration did not want these headlines, and so they never authorized servicing this target. When this current Secretary of Defense gets in there and he says, what is your number one target that you have not been able to hit? This one probably came up. And he said, right, dust off the plan. Because and so explain to people, they did not write a plan in 11 days. This was probably sitting around for a couple months.
Sure. Well, the target packets vary. They could develop one rapidly if the need arises. So I won't say that this didn't come up as a target of opportunity and they said, hey, we know this is occurring, and the intelligence said that, so develop the target list for that. But my guess is what you're saying is that several of these targets have been listed and weren't exercised by the former administration. They would rather put up a drone and see if they can affect something that way. And there's nothing wrong with that either. I'm not trying to criticize those guys. Some of those drone strikes are extremely effective, and it keeps the enemy moving around constantly and freaked out. So I like that. But
And it also doesn't make it onto the news. That's the other good part about that.
No, but only negative stuff about Trump makes it on the news.
Yeah, but a drone can't take a prisoner.
No, and it's not that discriminative. They know they've killed several, non-combatants, and they always like to say children and all these things.
A U.S. service member has died from wounds suffered during a raid against Al-Qaeda.
And nobody's criticized anybody for 8 years about any of that. So, for the previous 8 years. Prior to that, it was, Bush was evil because he was doing drone strikes and they were indiscriminate. But that all aside, these guys need to... I think the Pentagon and the Department of Defense now is empowered to say, hey, we know how to do these things. We know how to take care of this. And they were tasked. The president tasked them. He didn't come up with a plan to take out ISIS. He tasked the Department of Defense and said, "Hey, come up with a plan, and we'll take a look at it."
He gives them an end state. He gives them a goal. So, look, in six, and they, I'm sure Mattis has gone through this process where he sits down and he says, "Do you want them degraded or destroyed? Do you want them degraded to where they cannot do terrorism in Europe or whatever?" And so this is probably new to Trump, but. This is what he signed up for.
It's new to Trump. It's new to all the Department of Defense for the last 8 years. They haven't been able to do that. Back in the day, in the 80s, the Department of Defense came in and said, we want the Ranger Battalion to take out, to invade Panama, the Ranger Regiment. And the colonel from Fort Benning briefed the president I believe, in the Oval Office, on exactly how the Ranger Regiment was going to take the country down. And there was other special operation forces involved in other things, but the fact is they were tasked to do that. They developed a plan, and they came back and briefed it. It was approved, and we invaded the country. And that's how it's supposed to work. You're supposed to ask the Department of Defense, if you think something needs to be done, ask them if they can do it and how they're going to do it. If you don't like what they say, don't do it. But don't tell them you know better. And I know people think that Trump's out there telling everybody he knows everything. Then why did he ask them to take out ISIS or how to do it? And you know as well as I do, we could put 3 armor brigades in there. In 2 weeks, we could take the whole area over. No question.
Well, so we're going to take a break. When we come back, just to refresh people's memory, because it's been 8 years. When we come back, how do you fight an enemy that brings their families to the battlefield? So you've been dealing with these guys since 2001. So when we come back, Tom Bigley, former Delta Force operator, will answer that question for us. Bryan Suits here. It's America Now, 844-NOW-0777. Back right after this with the answer to that question, because it seems like it's suddenly relevant for the next 4 years. Back right after this on America Now.
Well, I'm sailing, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's America Now, Bryan Suits here until 9 o'clock there on the East Coast if you're taking this live. I just went on Facebook Live. If you go to Facebook, The Dark Secret Place, I'll chime in and do some live. And next hour, John Thomas is going to come in studio. We're going to talk politics and stuff. But back with Tom Bigley, former Delta Force operator. And so the Gulf War for me was textbook. The enemy was wearing uniforms. There were no kids on the battlefield. There were just T-72s. It was perfect. I mean, it looked like a manual. Then I went to Bosnia, and then I was with you in Baghdad. You, on the other hand, Mogadishu, Afghanistan, Iraq, you have been on these dense, complicated battlefields. So tell me, remind everyone, because it's been 8 years, when the enemy fights behind their families, how do you fight back?
Well, it's a question of is somebody a combatant or not a combatant? It's really not, are they armed? Is it a woman? Is it a little kid? Because little kids can be moving ammunition, they can be carrying RPG rounds, and that makes them combatants. I know it sounds horrible, like you have to affect people, but the reality of it is the U.S. forces, not just the Special Operations Forces, I'd say U.S. forces in general, do not just engage people, indiscriminately. However, if they're taking fire from buildings, they might return fire. If these guys are hiding with a bunch of, families huddled around them, they're going to create casualties. And unfortunately, that's on them. It's not up to the U.S. forces to try to discriminate that, oh, well, we're going to let them stand behind, 100 women and shoot at us. It doesn't work that way.
And we saw, you saw and I saw some 19-year-old Americans have to make horrible decisions when 12-year-old boys were sent out in the middle of the street to pick up an AK off of a dead guy. Some 19-year-old American kids, 18-year-old riflemen had to make horrible decisions, but the hard truth is that you can't allow them to do that or they'll keep doing it. And that the second that kid picks up a weapon, he's a combatant. Now, this happened in the last 8 years. It's just that we didn't see it on our TV screens.
Well, it happens all the time. We see people, and even back in the day in the wars in Central America, I was in Honduras, and we had little Nicaraguans that were 12 and 14-year-old kids running around with AKs, and some of them were targeted at the time. So it really is a matter of who's a combatant. I've told people to engage forces when these guys were pushing a pickup truck out of a war zone. And the guy asked me, why did they do that? I said, well, they drove in with the truck shooting at us. Now they're trying to recover their equipment. They don't get to play both sides.
Well, but and it's funny because I'm seeing a media that for 8 years went into a coma about the hard truth about what war looks like, and the American people, I'm afraid, have become desensitized even more than before, because for 8 years we weren't having to deal with the fact that if you're dropping bombs, and Barack Obama dropped bombs, he shot Hellfire missiles off of drones at a rate 10 times greater than Bush, but he did it in a way where politically it was not a albatross around his neck, because NBC is not on the ground in Waziristan.
Well, not just that. Even if they knew about it, they wouldn't report anything negative. I mean, there was nothing negative reported about the guy. Now, all of a sudden, everything this guy does is under scrutiny and is going to come out as a war crime, and he's illegitimate. The left is absolutely ridiculous. Here's the problem. Muslims are killing people in droves in ISIS around the world. They're targeting people all over the globe. I didn't start that. I know we're not letting people in from some of these countries, and that affects me and you.
Yeah.
Because a friend of mine works over there, and they're talking about having a ban of U.S. people, and that's fine. You have a sovereign country if you want to do that. But the reality of it is, the reason why the Shia government is in charge in Iraq is because of us. And, it's not because we wanted to leave with all our guys 2 or 3 years ago and create ISIS. That was the administration's fault. And you can debate invading Iraq and all those things. That happened. It's over. It's not going to go backwards and say, oh, we didn't do that. And these people, the Muslim people that are supporting ISIS and doing all these things globally, are absolutely responsible, not Donald Trump.
Well, it's funny because one of the first things, since they were able to get pictures of this 8-year-old girl, who technically is an American citizen but doesn't remember ever being here because she left when she was 1.5 or 2, and immediately these armchair experts started saying, oh, this is going to be a great recruiting tool for ISIS. Look, bad news for everybody. You can't fight them without it being a recruiting tool. And secondly, they've been getting away. Al Qaeda and ISIS have been getting away with shielding behind their families for 8 years. The side effect of this is that maybe they put their families in a safe place and they start fighting their war in an honorable way without putting kids in the way.
Well, I don't see that happening. I don't think they're going to do anything honorable. The reality of this is how much worse does it have to get? We're cutting people's heads off. We're burning them in cages. We're slaughtering them like sheep. Okay, I want somebody from the other side, the Democratic side, to tell me what is going to be worse. What are they going to do?
Like, yeah, how much worse can it get? So you're saying that you think